Welcome to the Growing Food and Feeding People podcast. Whether you're a backyard gardener, a market gardener, or a small scale farmer just starting out or a seasoned grower, this show is for you. Join us as we share tips and tricks, tactics and hacks to growing food for yourself, your family, and your community, as well as sharing stories here from the field and other growers and farmers making a difference in their local food webs. My name is Cody, and I will be your host, so let's get growing. All right, episode 4, season 1 of the Growing Food and Feeding People podcast. This show is produced by Simply and Easy Media, and this episode is sponsored by Simplistic Farms, bringing fresh local produce to West Michigan, one family at a time. All right, guys, in this episode, we are going to dig into Project Feed Your Neighbor. We're going to crunch some numbers around what it would take to make it a reality, to bring it to life, and I think we're going to set some audacious goals. Before we do, when I was younger, the thought of farming really wasn't all that appealing. But then I planted some seeds, and it grew on me. All right, there's my one for the episode. So let's jump right into the segment we like to call This Week on the Farm. And this week on the farm was really all about the harvest still. Um, Although summer is winding down, we're still cranking out the veggies every week. And this week was no exception. I planted beans in 50-foot beds as well, but I'm super impressed with this 20-foot section. It's just a 12-inch wide bed by 20 foot long along a section of chain link fence I have put up. And that thing has been producing for months. I mean, I'm talking off that 20-foot strip, we're pulling over 7 pounds a week of beans still. It's just baffling to me. If you have any chain link fence on your farm, or any fence for that matter, you could definitely be growing some green beans on there. So green beans are still in full force. Harvesting a lot of peppers, quite a few melons this week, as well as our squash, and some celery, some broccoli, some carrots, and even some cabbage. We just started harvesting cabbage this week as well. So there were a couple heads ready. The majority are not quite yet. The preserving hasn't stopped either. Jeannie spent most of the week trying to finish up on the apples. She's just about done. She may have 1 or 2 more batches left, and then all done with the apples for the season. Uh, we're dehydrating some watermelon along with our apples, as well as dehydrating another batch or two of hot peppers for some hot pepper blend. And we're going to try our first batch of hot sauce this week. And we may even make a little habanero jelly. We had really good production on our hot peppers, so we're definitely getting to do some experimenting and try some new product that I'm pretty excited about. As we got into a little bit last week, aside from harvesting, our biggest project on the farm right now is firewood. We're definitely trying to stock up for our Michigan winter that is right around the corner. Could honestly be up here, could be within weeks. Who knows? I'm hoping we still have a month or two before it gets too nasty, but you just never can tell up here. So that's kind of been our main mission, putting as much firewood away as possible. Finally decided to fall the great big elm tree in my front yard this week with the help of a good buddy. It was definitely a two-man job because I had to climb about 12 feet up the tree and hook a chain to it so we could pull on it and make sure it fell right where we wanted, because I had to land it between my well head, which is about 12 feet off my house, and then between the well head and my wood stove, my outdoor wood furnace. So I didn't have a huge gap to fall it between, so I had to make sure it was going to fall right where we wanted it to, and it did. No damage done there. That was a big tree, a lot of wood in it. So we finally got that headache out of the way. And October 1st started the archery season here in Michigan for whitetails. So we're also spending a little bit of time in the woods whenever we get the chance to try to harvest some more venison, stock the freezer up a little bit more for the winter. That is what's happening this week on the farm. So let's jump right into today's topic. I'm excited about this one. It's a continuation of last week's episode, and that is Project Feed Your Neighbor. Man, am I excited about this project. Glad we're finally able to launch it and head in that direction. And it really answers the question, can an online farm feed an offline community? That's the idea we're tackling. That is the idea of generating revenue by creating value-based content around your farm or garden activities to fund the day-to-day operations of the farm so we can continue to grow food and feed families in the local community at no cost to those families. That's the big driving factor behind this. Reaching more folks in the community that could really use the fresh veggies throughout the summer and getting it on their table. So that's what we're going to jump into. Now, the idea of generating income online or through creating content is not a new idea. That's already been proven. In fact, YouTube has paid out nearly $30 billion to creators and artists, media companies over just the last 3 years through ad revenue alone. So that's not including sponsorships, brand deals, merchandising, memberships, podcasts, uh, anything else. Strictly what flows right through YouTube, which would be the Google AdSense. There are literally thousands of full-time content creators, and I could show you example after example of farm and garden channels that after time have built a substantial following and are earning what us common folk would consider a pretty good living. Now, what I haven't seen is anyone utilizing that, structuring their farm business around it, and transitioning their focus and goals from selling vegetables to feeding people. Now, it doesn't always have to be about more money. I mean, yes, you do need money for the mission and to survive, but I honestly see this as an opportunity to change focus, to take it off me and put it more on we, right? Um, like I said before, I know it's important. We're all focused on growing our own food, but I think we also need to focus on growing food for those who can't, for whatever reason. They still need good, clean veggies. So if we know it's possible, then what would it take? What kind of numbers would we have to hit? What would it look like? How does one generate that kind of income online? All right, so let's break it down. If we wanted to feed 100 families a season, CSA style, a box a week. Now, if we were selling CSA shares, it'd be $500 for a family CSA share for a 15-week CSA. For 100 families, that would generate $50,000 for the year. Break that down, that's about $4,200 a month. Now, if we wanted to feed 50 families, which is honestly a more realistic goal for the first couple of years, we would need to generate $25,000 for the year. Broke down over 12 months, that's about $2,100 a month. Now that's basically the baseline numbers needed to operate the farm to grow enough vegetables to feed that many families. So looking at the numbers, we would need to generate about $25,000 or $2,100 a month to feed 50 families every week throughout the season. And we would need around $50,000 a year or $4,200 a month to feed 100 families every week throughout the season. So now that we have an idea of the revenue needed, how does one generate that kind of income online? Now, there are several ways, and actually, I think that's kind of key. Much like any offline farm has several income streams or sources, so should your online farm. Like, for example, here at Simplistic Farms, we sell veggies, but we also sell farm fresh eggs. We also sell or barter firewood. We also lease some fields to a larger farmer to generate some income for the farm. We've also raised some cows, and we also have farm merch. And if we had bees, we'd probably be selling honey. So the point is, diversification is key. So you're not limiting your income to just one source and essentially putting a cap on it. And it makes sense to do the same thing online, especially as a small channel or podcast in the beginning. Set up over time several income sources around the farm and content that you're creating. Now, what exactly are we talking about? Well, first, and the one everyone probably thinks about, is YouTube ad revenue. Companies pay creators for views on their ads. Now, in order to qualify for monetization for YouTube ad revenue, your channel has to have a minimum of 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours in the last 365 days. So, it takes a little time to build your channel up to that point, right? That isn't something that a creator can count on day one starting their channel. It's a great revenue stream once you build your channel to that point, but it's not one you can rely on right off the bat. The second one would be sponsors. Okay, show sponsors or video sponsors. Those are usually a one and done. They'll sponsor a specific video or maybe a series of videos, or they'll pay for ad spots in a podcast. And those can be a very lucrative income source, again, once you've built your audience up to a certain point. YouTube, the sponsors usually don't come until after you're monetized and have a little bit larger audience. And sponsors could be in the form of income or, say, a product. Okay, but that usually comes after monetization and after you've built a little bit larger audience. Now, As far as podcast platform goes, there is a possibility of picking up local sponsors if you already have a little bit of a local social following. Say you've built up enough followers via your Facebook channel or Instagram locally, there is the potential of picking up local sponsors for ad space on your podcast from day one. And then the third income stream for the farm eventually could be brand deals. Those are more of a long term commitment, more of a representative relationship, and typically a larger commitment from the company. But again, that comes when you have a much larger audience. Now, at that point, it only makes sense and is a no-brainer for the companies because they have a targeted audience that'll probably already know and like their product, right? Rather than spending the money on TV or radio ads that'll just go out to the general audience, where they're only going to have a small percentage of people that may be interested in what they're offering. By spending that money with a content creator that has a targeted audience of thousands of viewers or listeners who are all interested in your product. So it really does make sense for companies to spend their ad money with content creators via YouTube and podcasts. But the next couple are what I believe are key when you're just starting out and really could be the game changer. However, I do want to preface this by saying this can and should only be implemented if A, you are providing real value to your audience. They are getting something out of every piece of content that you create. And B, your cause and mission benefits others and is worth getting behind or supporting. If you can check the box in both of those areas, then I would say you don't have to and you shouldn't wait to be YouTube monetized to start making money for your farm online. And those two ways would be A, Patreon membership site, and B, farm merch. Both of those things can be started from day one, and I really don't see any reason to wait, especially if you're doing this as a way to help fund your farm and your mission. So if you're not familiar, Patreon membership site is a lot like if you remember PBS. Okay, it's funded by the viewers through monthly contribution. It's basically a listener or viewer raising their hand and saying, "Hey, I really dig what you're doing, and I want to help support it." And then the site on Patreon allows that listener or viewer to decide at what level they want to support that creator. And honestly, I think this is probably the number one source for a brand new farm business if they are out there doing things right for the right reasons and providing value to their audience. This is going to be the quickest method to raise money for the mission by creating high quality, value added content free to the viewer or listener via YouTube or podcasts and providing a space for those that want to join you on the journey to come along. It reminds me of many hands make little work. Now, creating farm merch via print on demand site has never been easier, so there's really no reason that shouldn't be created day one. You can design the hats, t-shirts, hoodies, whatever it is your audience enjoys, and then the print on demand company handles the rest, from production, shipping, billing, customer service. And farm merch is always a great way people enjoy supporting what you're doing. Ad revenue, sponsorship, and brand deals will come, but it'll be a little bit further down the road. So for that, we're going to focus on Patreon membership sites and merchandise. So remember, we figured out the revenue needed to feed 50 families a season, $25,000, or about $2,100 a month. Okay, so let's look at merchandise first. We're not going to go crazy here, but let's say, okay, with merchandise, we can profit about $10 an item. So our first goal there should be $100 a month. That's 10 items a month. Okay, that should be pretty simple. 2 to 3 items a week, or just do a new design launch once a month to keep it simple and make sure that you hit that goal. But that's where I'd probably start, $100 a month in merchandise, and see where that goes from there. That obviously still leaves about $2,000 a month still needed in revenue for the day-to-day operations of the farm. So that's where we're going to focus on a Patreon membership site. It's basically like PBS on TV or crowdfunding, and a great way for the audience to support the content creators. So the way Patreon works is the members get to choose what level they want to contribute monthly, and they can change that anytime. I think the different levels are $5 a month, $10, $20, $50, and maybe $100, depending on how the content creator sets it up. And that typically allows the Patreon members to receive additional benefits and perks as well. But a great way for those that want to get involved and show support. And from what I've seen researching other creators' Patreon sites, is that typically the average is you were to average all the monthly contributions out, it lands somewhere between $5 and $10 a month per patron on average. So of course you're going to have a good majority of $5 patrons, but then once in a while you'll get some crazy person that really wants to throw some support your way. But it's really better to plan conservatively. So what would it take? How many patrons would you need to join your cause and to support your content to meet the revenue needs of the farm? Now, at $5 a month contribution per patron, you would need about 400 patrons to hit your $2,000 a month goal. At $10 a month contributions, you'd need 200 patrons to hit that same goal. Realistically, it's probably going to be a mix between those two. So you could try to set a goal of, say, 200 patrons at the $5 a month mark and another 100 patrons at $10 a month. With that, 300 patrons would allow you to hit the first goal of $2,100 a month, reaching your $24,000 annually and the ability to actually feed 50 families in the community, which would be absolutely incredible. I think it's a pretty audacious goal for the first year, and it may take a little bit longer than that, honestly, but that really is the first goal, because what I ultimately see, kind of the finish line of the project, is to build it to the point through Patreon memberships and merch, and eventually ad revenue, sponsorship, and brand deals, is to hit that $50,000 annually or more, so we can actually feed 100 local families that could really use it every season. And realistically, that could be done by just doubling the first goal. Instead of providing value to 300 patrons, you try to provide value to 600 to 800 patron members, which is completely doable. I mean, with 2.3 billion active users on YouTube alone every single month, that's a pretty small piece of the pie. That's a pretty small piece of the audience needed to get behind what you're doing. And that ultimately is the point to taking it online. The ability to reach many, many more people outside of your local community and bring a village together from around the globe. In my mind, the possibilities are quite incredible. And after breaking the numbers down, it actually seems even more doable. In fact, I know it is. I can give you a great example right now. If you go over to the No-Till Growers Patreon page, and Jesse Frost and Josh Satin produce some great content between the two of them. But if you go over to their Patreon page, at the time of recording this podcast, they're sitting at 607 patrons and generating $3,218 a month via their patrons every single month. And that is just in support of the content that they're creating online. And those guys do provide some valuable content. I'll give them that. I listen to them every week. And honestly, the best part of all of it is I truly believe this is duplicatable, right? If we can build this up to where we can feed 100 families and we can document all of it along the whole way, I believe we can help other farms do the same exact thing. So, if we want to talk audacious goals, our mission is to feed 10,000 families across the country or around the world through the implementation of online farm businesses. Okay, we're using our farm as a proof of concept farm, but once we get it down, we'd like to help 100 other small farms or market gardeners do the same exact thing. Because if we can help 100 other farms feeding 100 families each every single season, that's 10,000 families a year. Now that's an audacious goal, but I think it's doable. How long will it take? That's what's yet to be seen. But now we have a direction we want to move in and strategies we can implement into the farm business right now to start heading in that direction. So that is Project Feed Your Neighbor. Can an online farm feed an offline community? And I believe it can. Yeah! All right, it is time for our farm and garden word of the week. You're going to love this one. This week's farm and garden word of the week is heliotropism. What the heck is heliotropism? Is it a helicopter ride for tourists through the tropics? A tropical drink? Another ism word that just confuses you? Or is heliotropism the behavior that young sunflowers exhibit when they follow the sun from east to west as it crosses the sky? It would be D. The behavior young sunflowers exhibit when they follow the sun from east to west as it crosses the sky is a great example of heliotropism. All right, so hopefully you have been inspired or entertained, learned something or laughed. As always, I cannot thank you enough for joining me here, and that really is the easiest way to support the cause, and it's free. So if you'd like to continue the conversation, you can find us over on Facebook at Simplistic Farms LLC, or you can drop us a comment and check out all of our content over on YouTube at Simple Ain't Easy Simplistic Farms. And if you'd like to get involved, you can find us at patreon.com, at patreon/Simplistic Farms. We hope y'all have a great week, make somebody smile, and I'll talk to you on the next one.